Mack, the 5-3 Gamecocks looking for a bounce-back win this Saturday against Vanderbilt, a team that has lost 4 of its last 5 games and has been outscored by a combined 134 points in SEC play. Locked On Gamecock podcast host and Gamecock Digest writer Andrew Lyon back with us. Andrew, let's take a step back to the Mizzou game. Another tough outing for the Gamecock offense. The Tigers outgained USC by over 150 yards, and it was the 5th game this season that Spencer Rattler had more turnovers than touchdowns. Rattler even told us after the game that he wasn't sure that the Gamecock coaching staff knew how to combat what the Tigers were doing defensively. That, along with a lot of other struggles, has led to questions about offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield. What do you make of this situation?
Well, Chandler, I think it's pretty clear and evident at this point that there are some legitimate problems with this Gamecock offense. You look at this roster compared from last season going into this year, you've got a lot more talent to work with. And obviously it starts with Spencer Rattler at the quarterback position. And yet, despite all that, for one reason or another, it seems like that South Carolina's had a real hard time getting the football in the hands of their playmakers. Guys like Josh Vann and Jaheim Bell, who had really good seasons this past year. Antoine Wells, who quite honestly, besides the Arkansas game, he hasn't really had one of those big performances that it seems like he's capable of having. And Marshawn Lloyd, even, it took a few games into the season for him to get going for one reason or another. And so, at this point, Chandler, when it all becomes a trend, you have to ask the question, well, what exactly is the issue?
And a big word that the players used Tuesday was execution. Marshawn Lloyd telling us that the coaches are making the right calls. The players aren't doing their jobs. Do you feel like it's that simple, or are they not being put in positions to succeed?
I do believe that at times some of these players are not being utilized correctly in this scheme. And I think that's part of the reason why Marcus Satterfield, despite having all this time now, is really starting to hear a lot of backlash from the fan base at South Carolina. And, you know, the biggest example I'll use from the Missouri game, Chandler, is the pressure that Missouri brought. Obviously, Missouri brought a very unique defensive front with the type of pressures that they brought, the twists and the stunts that they did up on their defensive line. And, you know, one simple way to combat something like that would have been to do some play action bootleg or roll out concepts, which essentially just moves the pocket from the original spot over to another part of the field, which would have given Spencer Rattler some more time, would have given him some cushion in order to be able to make some throws, to make some plays happen. I don't recall a single one of those concepts being utilized on Saturday afternoon. Now, of course, again, there are times where, you know, on the edge, the perimeter blocking does need to be a little bit better. They had gotten progressively better throughout the season, but against Missouri, they probably took a step back in that regard. The offensive line would probably tell you we could have done a better job in our one-on-ones against that defensive front. So again, it's not always just one answer, but in this case, I don't think that the biggest issue is execution by the players.
Maybe a little silver lining for the Gamecocks is the fact that the Commodores are giving up 470 yards per game this season. That leads the SEC. So what are you expecting to see from the Gamecock offense in Nashville?
I'm expecting the Gamecocks to come out in Nashville with a sense of urgency, Chandler. I think that it was very clear after the game against Missouri that the players were very upset with the overall performance. I certainly don't think that it's going to be completely easy. You know, they could come out and stumble a little bit at the beginning, but I do think that this is just what the doctor would have ordered after what happened this past weekend against Missouri for the Gamecocks facing a team like the Vanderbilt Commodores.
All right, as always, thanks, Andrew. Gamecocks will be looking for their 14th straight victory against the Commodores and will also look to clinch bowl eligibility for the 2nd straight season this Saturday.